Hello guys and welcome to today's session. Today we are going to talk about co-management. So guys, I am really excited about today's tutorial because I believe that co-management is the way forward, and this tutorial should help everybody from Intune as well as SCCM background. So let's just get started. Let's just take a look over today's agenda to begin with. So we are going to start and take a look over the concept behind using Intune and SCCM together. That is what co-management is. Co-management, as the word signifies co, has existence of Intune as well as SCCM at the same time. We will talk about the other related scenarios, and first we will discuss what is not co-management to clear the air. Then we will talk about what exactly is co-management and when to make use of it. We'll talk about the various use cases of co-management, and we'll take a look over the architecture and management, how exactly the flow happens at the background and how exactly the devices are managed. Then we'll take a look over the setup, what exactly needs to be done, how exactly to set up co-management, what are the requirements, the prerequisites of co-management, and then we'll take a look over how exactly the flow is happening, what exactly is happening when we are trying to manage a device when we are making it co-managed. We'll take a look over the flow. We'll take a look over the background processing. We'll take a look over the all the logs that are needed to be checked in case the policies are not reaching the device, the registries. We'll take a look over that. I will be providing a few key pointers on co-management, what we needs to keep in mind, and then we'll take a look over workloads. We will take a look over what exactly workload is and what exactly is co-management capabilities, and then I'll do a live demo. So guys, this co-management topic, I have decided to do it in two parts. The first part is going to be rather theoretical, and in the second one I'll try and cover most of the demo part. All right, so let's just get started. So let's just start with the concept, the idea behind using SCCM. Why do we exactly need Intune and SCCM at the same point? So just a brief background, guys, if you're from the SCCM background, Intune is actually a cloud-based enterprise mobility management service that uses a device's inbuilt MDM capabilities to manage the device and its app. In addition to mobile devices, administrator can also use Intune to manage computers running with Windows 10. And right now we are concerned about Windows 10 because this tutorial is specifically for co-management. So earlier, user had to choose between SCCM and Intune to manage their Windows computers. Activating SCCM client on a Windows device actually automatically disabled the built-in MDM capabilities. Microsoft actually assumed that our customers would migrate devices to Intune as a group, and they believed that SCCM and Intune should not be on the same device at the same point. Therefore, there was no need to provide and permit simultaneous management. However, later on, we noticed that it was not feasible to move all the devices, or it was not feasible to move a full-fledged SCCM setup to Intune on one stroke. We realized that we required capabilities that would let us manage a Windows machine via Intune and SCCM simultaneously until the machine eventually moved out of SCCM and was making use of Intune standalone. So co-management is like a bridge from the old SCCM infrastructure to incrementally moving towards it provides us a phased approach towards EMM. Also, co-management can also be used if there are some SCCM functionalities that we want to implement, which at this point of time Intune can't. So, well, as I said, and guys, one of the examples of that would be, let's just say something like an OSD deployment. So you must be aware that using Intune, we can deploy applications, compliance, configuration policies, patches but we cannot deploy an OSD. So that is wherein the coexistence of Intune and SCCM comes into the picture. What this means is the same device is going to be co-managed, that is managed via Intune and SCCM at the same point. Whatever part of the policies we would like to be managed via Intune would be managed via Intune as per admin's setup, and whatever we want to be managed via SCCM can be managed via SCCM. So, before we actually deep dive and find out how exactly co-management functions, I would like to clear the air and talk about what exactly co-management is not. However, on these, on the other two scenarios, SCCM and Intune are also involved. Therefore, I mean, we very often come across scenarios wherein Intune and SCCM are involved, and we have a picture that okay, if Intune and SCCM are there, it must be a scenario of co-management. However, in every case, that doesn't happen. So we need to make sure that we have a good understanding of the other scenarios wherein SCCM and Intune are involved, so that we can take a call and find out whether it actually is it actually is a co-managed setup or not. The first thing that comes into our mind when we talk about SCCM and Intune is the hybrid setup. So, well, the whole idea of having the hybrid setup was having a single pane of glass. This infra actually used Intune as a delivery mechanism for policies, profiles, and apps to devices, but it used the SCCM's on-premise infra to administer the content. What this means is that the admin made use of the same SCCM console, and using the same console he was able to manage the mobile devices as well. So let's just think about it this way. Let's just say that this is our on-prem infra and this is our SCCM server. So let's call it SCCM, and let's just say this is a mobile device, and this mobile device is present on the internet. So this is the internet and this is the intranet. Okay, so because SCCM would obviously be present on the intranet, and this is the internet. So INTER, excuse my handwriting. So yeah, so conventionally in the intranet we would be having servers and we would be having machines. So let's just say this is a desktop D1. It could be a laptop as well. So all these devices have the SCCM SCCM client in them, and SCCM can very easily manage them. However, if we wanted to manage a mobile device over the internet, then using SCCM conventionally it was not possible because the mobile device was not connected to the intranet. I mean, it was not in direct contact with the SCCM server. Therefore, the policies could not be directly pushed. In this case, came into existence a solution called hybrid. In hybrid, what we did was we introduced the Intune service into the mix as well. And we already know that Intune service has the capability of managing mobile devices over the internet. So what we did was we actually established a link between Intune and SCCM. So this link was established in the SCCM console, and now the SCCM console could talk with the Intune service. So now what we did was we created policies, we created applications, and we created let's just say device configurations. So we created all these in Intune. I'm sorry, we created all these in SCCM, different kind of policies, and a sync happened between SCCM and Intune. So all these policies in a way got replicated over here as well. Once they got replicated over here in Intune, they were delivered to the devices. So the advantage of this is that the administrator who has always been using the SCCM console still manage the mobile devices, the end mobile devices using the SCCM console. He did not have to log into the Intune console, which would obviously be a newer console for him, and make policies or provision applications from there, because seamlessly a sync happened between SCCM and Intune, and all the policies created in SCCM moved over to the Intune. In this case, the MDM authority was SCCM. Okay, so it was SCCM wherein we were making the policies, and it was SCCM which was the MDM authority. The whole idea of introducing this concept was we wanted a single point of administration or a single pane of glass, a centralized location, that is SCCM, wherein we were making all the policies, making all the applications, all the device configurations, and it was syncing with Intune and it was sent over to the devices. This setup was needed because SCCM alone conventionally could not manage the mobile devices, because the mobile devices were on the internet and SCCM was on the intranet. So hybrid actually used Intune as a delivery channel to devices, but SCCM's on-prem infra was used to administer the content. Okay, it made the administration obviously easier because there was one pane and one traditional console which the admin had already always been using, and there was a synchronization that happened between Intune and SCCM, and the policies created in SCCM were replicated to Intune seamlessly. Obviously, for this to set up for this to happen, we had to create this setup, this link between Intune and between SCCM and Intune, so that the SCCM knows which tenant it has to go to. So for this, what we have to do is we have to go to the SCCM console and we have to provide our Intune subscription. That is how that trust is established between SCCM and a specific tenant. As I said, the MDM authority was SCCM in this case, and this solution is going to be deprecated very soon. So this hybrid setup is going to go away very soon. So we are actually encouraging users to move from hybrid to Intune standalone, so that we don't need SCCM to manage the mobile devices. So this hybrid setup was introduced keeping mobile management of mobile devices in mind. So, well, as per my understanding, I believe that the hybrid setup is going to go away sometime around August of 2019. Well, there isn't any official date as of this moment, but yeah, that is where we are headed towards. Then came the mixed authority. So mixed authority is also in a way part of hybrid. It is actually a transition phase. So let me just go through the diagram again. So let me just say that this is our SCCM server, and there is a mobile device over here. SCCM was there on the intranet, and there was a mobile device in the internet. Okay, so right now what we were doing was there was a sync that was happening between SCCM and the Intune service. So there was a sync happening, and whatever policies we were creating over here, whatever applications we were creating over here, whatever device configurations we were creating over here was getting synced to the Intune service, and then it was getting deployed to the mobile device. Everything was managed from here, and it was a single pane of administration, a single console. User did not have to go to Intune service and make policies over there as well. So this was hybrid setup, as we already discussed. Now, let's just say that the end user wanted to move from this hybrid setup to Intune standalone. So, well, obviously that is needed, and that is what everybody is going to eventually do, because as I said, hybrid is going to go away very soon. So hybrid is going to be decommissioned. So in that case, what the user had to do was move from SCCM, or move from hybrid setup to Intune standalone setup. So between hybrid and Intune standalone came a, a transitional phase referred to as mixed. We are calling it mixed because at this stage, what happened was some users in our environment were managed by Intune, and some users in our environment were managed by SCCM. So let's just say that there are n number of users in our environment, and this is the hybrid setup. Now I want to, or now the user wants to move to Intune standalone. Obviously, he wouldn't move all the users from the hybrid setup to Intune standalone at the same point of time. Right, he would go ahead with, let's just say, 10 users to begin with. When he is able to see that okay, these 10 users are working fine with Intune standalone, then he would move the other 10 users, and then the end goal would be moving from the hybrid setup to Intune standalone. But the transitional phase would have some users being managed via SCCM and some users being managed via Intune. That transitional phase is referred to as mixed authority. So in a way, if we have to differentiate between hybrid and mixed authority, in a way hybrid is a part of in a way mixed authority is a part of hybrid, not the other way around. So mixed authority originated from hybrid. So conventionally we had the hybrid setup wherein everything was getting managed from a single pane of glass. Now the user wanted that, okay, I want to move to Intune standalone for managing of mobile devices because that's the way forward. So what he did was, out of the 1,000 users that he had in his environment, he decided to move 100 users first to Intune. Once that migration happened, then he decided to move with next 500 users, and then decided to move ahead with the rest 400 users. So this transitional phase wherein the 100 users were reporting to Intune and the other 900 users in his environment were reporting to SCCM was referred to as the mixed authority state. It was used for this was a transitional phase, and the end goal was phased phased movement to Intune standalone. We did not want to move all the n users at the same time, but we wanted to do it in a phased approach. Okay, so in a mixed environment, some users would be managed by SCCM and some would be managed by Intune. So what we used to do was I'll discuss in detail in the next slide how exactly it was done, but the licensing of the user made the difference. If the user in a way did not have the Intune license, if the user only had SCCM enrollment, then he was in the hybrid setup. However, if we provided him only the Intune license, in that case, his MDM authority became Intune in a way. However, the overall MDM authority was still of the tenant was still SCCM. So as I said, it was like it was a transitional phase which occurred. So this is what we were headed towards: hybrid to Intune standalone. This is the end goal. If the user has a hybrid setup, as I said, hybrid is going to go away very soon, and the user wants to go to Intune standalone, then in between lied the mixed authority. And from mixed authority, the user eventually moved to Intune standalone. Okay. So, how did the user move from mixed authority to Intune standalone? I'm not going to go with the very details, but just a 1,000 feet view for you guys. We had something called an importer. We still have something called an importer tool, and the admin has to run that importer tool, which actually moves all the users and all the devices and everything from SCCM to Intune. Once that is done, then we have to assign Intune licenses to the end user, and then we make a collection in SCCM. We can refer to that as a limiting collection and add 10 users to that collection, because we don't want to move all the users at the same point of time. So we will make a limiting collection. Let's just call this limiting collection, and we will add 10 users to those limiting connections, and we would exclude these members from SCCM collection. So now these 10 members have Intune licenses and they are excluded from SCCM. So now they will get all the policies and everything from Intune. So and the end goal is from 10 moving from 10 to eventually n, that is the total users. So for this, as I said, we had to make use of something called the importer tool, which we have to run. For some users, the MDM authority would be Intune. That is for these 10 users, and for rest of the users, the MDM authority would be SCCM. The overall MDM authority was still SCCM. Okay. What we would finally do was delete the SCCM. What we would finally do was break this trust from SCCM and Intune, so that when all the end users are now reporting to the Intune service, and then we would change the MDM authority of the tenant to Intune. I mean, we are not going to get into very details of how exactly a migration happens between a hybrid setup or a mixed setup to Intune standalone. But I mean, this is something that you just need to keep in mind, that we have something called hybrid, and we have something called hybrid, and we have something called mixed. In case of hybrid, the whole idea of having hybrid setup was managing mobile devices using SCCM from a centralized pane, and SCCM used to run syncs with Intune service, and all the policies created in SCCM got reflected in Intune service, which later was deployed to the mobile devices. If we are moving and what we are headed towards is from hybrid setup to Intune setup, as this is having a as this would very soon reach the end of life. Therefore, to do that, in between lied a transitional phase called mixed authority, wherein some users were being managed via hybrid and some users were being managed via Intune standalone, because we didn't want to migrate all the users at the same time. So this was referred to as mixed. And when we were in the mixed scenario, we had to run some importer tool and move some policies. Once that was done, and once everything was moved from SCCM to Intune, then we could change the MDM authority overall of the tenant. Okay, so right now we have talked about two scenarios wherein SCCM and Intune were involved. However, we have to keep in mind, in both the cases, the MDM authority was SCCM, and that is not a co-management scenario. If that is the case, then let's just find out when exactly does co-management come into the picture, and what exactly is co-management. So let's just say that user never had the hybrid setup. Okay, user had SCCM, which was managing his on-prem devices, and now the user wants to make use of the modern capabilities. So let's just say that this is the SCCM server, and let me call it SCCM, and there were many devices. By devices, I mean laptops or desktops in the on-prem environment. Let me just 1 2 and D3. Okay, D3. There were many devices which SCCM was managing, and everything was good, everything was fine. Now we wanted to move the management from SCCM to Intune. Okay, now we wanted to do this. Now we wanted to move the management from SCCM to Intune, or we wanted to make use of both. We wanted to make use of SCCM as well as Intune, because we wanted to leverage the additional functionality or leverage the additional support that Intune provides, or that cloud management provides. We wanted to enable, in short, the modern management. In that case, co-management came into the picture. How? We will talk about that later, but this is one scenario. The other scenario was, let's just say that we had the hybrid setup, and we migrated from hybrid to mixed, and then eventually to Intune standalone, and all our mobile devices now started getting managed via Intune. Okay. However, we did not move the management of the Windows 10 devices. The Windows 10 devices were still being managed via SCCM. And now we want to manage the Windows 10 devices via Intune as well. So that is when co-management came into the picture. So guys, we have spoken about the when part. And before we talk about how to do it, the how part and the what part, I wanted to show you guys something very interesting. So this co-management functionality was introduced by Microsoft with the release of 1802 version of SCCM. So I think sometime in 2008, early 2018, the MVP of Microsoft, Brad Anderson, introduced this concept. So let's just take a look over what he has to say. It's a very short video. Let's just take a look over what he has to say about co-management.
Turning on co-management and adding the power of the Microsoft Cloud to your config manager deployment is so simple. And by doing so, you get new value immediately, like conditional access.
We actually thought that we had to do more. We thought we also had to plan the different workloads, but we didn't even have to do that.
It's just go into console and enable co-management and you're basically done.
With the 18.02 release of Config Manager, it literally is just 4 clicks. I'm not kidding when I say just 4 clicks.
Click 1, click 2, click 3, and click 4.
And now you have new capabilities that enhance your Config Manager deployment.
The first thing we wanted to do was implement conditional access the whole way.
The first thing we were doing was getting conditional access in place.
So it's a really good idea to enable co-management even if you're not ready to migrate your workload.
And with just 4 clicks, nothing changes about your existing processes and policies. You simply get new functionality delivered from the Microsoft Cloud immediately.
There was no effect on the existing environment except that you had these new benefits.
We didn't see anything that was changing inside of the config manager console.
There is no difference between today and yesterday.
And we had these new benefits out of the box.
Everything else was just business as usual.
Just business as usual with new stuff.
The financial impact was none.
Cost us nothing in money.
Didn't cost us anything.
There was no cost involved.
To learn about how to turn on co-management with just 4 clicks, visit aka.ms/WAC just 4 clicks. And when you turned on co-management, let the world know about it. Tweet me and say, hey, @Anderson, I just turned on co-management, and it literally was just 4 clicks.
So guys, that was Brad telling us why exactly we need to make use of co-management. And if you notice, the key takeaways from that was, the first thing was there is no extra cost involved in enabling co-management. And the recommendation is, even if we don't wish to move over to Intune or the cloud-based solution, we can still enable co-management in our environment and not move any workload. We will talk about what exactly workload is later on. So, and as I said, there are added benefits that we can still get. I mean, even if we are not moving any workload to Intune, we are just enabling co-management, which has no cost involved. We can still leverage the additional functionality or additional features of Intune, which is useful. So now let's just deep dive and talk about what exactly co-management is and how exactly is it useful. So as I said, co-management, as the word signifies, has co-management means that is combination. So it's combination of Intune and SCCM. It's a way to bridge the old and the new systems so that we can move devices incrementally towards the cloud management approach. Okay. So what co-management does is, first of all, we need to keep in mind co-management is only applicable for Windows 10 devices, not for Android, iOS, Mac devices, or for Windows mobile phones, only for Windows 10 devices, which obviously can have the SCCM client installed in them. Not for Windows servers, well, as of this moment, not for Windows servers, only Windows 10 devices, laptops or desktops. Okay. So what it does is it lets us manage the same Windows 10 laptop or Windows 10 desktop using SCCM as well as using, we'll cut this. So it lets us manage the same Windows 10 laptop using SCCM and using Intune at the same point. Okay. How we do it is, we have as I said, we have something called workload, and that workload is used to determine which policy will be administered by SCCM and which policy will be administered by Intune. Okay. By default, when we enable co-management, all the workload are set at are set at SCCM only, which means that even if you're enabling co-management, all the devices by default will be managed by SCCM unless and until we wish to make any changes. Okay. The difference between a co-managed state and a hybrid state or a mixed authority state is that the authority for the tenant is Intune standalone in this case. So in this case, Intune and the SCCM server don't talk with each other. Earlier, if you remember, when we were talking about hybrid or mixed, we said that we used to establish a connection between Intune and SCCM. In this case also we do, but earlier there was a sync happening between SCCM and Intune. However, in this case, no sync happens. The policies reach to the device, and the SCCM client in the device helps the device understand whether it needs to go to the SCCM console or whether it needs to go to the Intune console to fetch the policies that has been deployed to it. All right. So that would be the what part. So guys, now let's just take a look over a pictorial representation of how co-management is. So over here we have got a Windows 10 machine which has the config manager client installed in it, and well, Windows 10 machine already has a MDM layer in it, and due to which it is the MDM layer is talking with the Intune agent. The config manager is talking with the configuration manager service, that is our SCCM console or our SCCM server, and the inbuilt Intune agent in the device is talking with the Intune service. So at this point of time, the machine has, in a way, two MDM agents installed in it, and both are working to administer or to manage the device. So when this solution was proposed, a lot of customers came forward and they said that how are we going to ensure that the policies coming from both the config manager and the Intune service are not going to contradict each other, or are not going to overwrite each other. To ensure that this would not happen, a lot of work was done to make sure that the config manager service and the Intune service are talking with each other. When I say that they were talking with each other, I am not saying that the policies from config manager were syncing to Intune like it was in case of hybrid, but a communication channel was established between the config manager service and Intune. When we actually set up co-management, we will see that we have to provide the credentials of our Intune tenant and make that communication happen. So this is exactly what co-management is. The device at the same point of time has the config manager agent and the Intune agent. Both the agents are talking to their respective service, and both the services are in sync and talking to each other. The policies are not syncing, but in a way both the services are talking with each other to ensure that there is no overlapping of policies, and the device can be managed by using the best of both the solutions, making the administration as well as the user experience better. Now let's just talk about the use cases. When and why do we exactly need this? So if you refer to the video wherein Brad was talking about bringing this capability of co-management for administering devices, the two key point wherein the video stressed was, first, obviously, that the solution is free, and second was conditional access. So the very first thing organizations want to make use of after enabling co-management in their devices is conditional access. So what conditional access does? Conditional access is a feature of Azure, and it works hand in hand with Intune. So what conditional access does is, let's just say that I have made a conditional access policy, and the conditional access policy says that any device will have access to, let's just say, any cloud resource, let's just say Outlook or Exchange Online, Teams, OneDrive, anything like that, if the device is compliant, and the compliance policy is delivered to the device by Intune. Okay, so if the device is compliant, only then the device will have access to the Office 365 applications. If the device is not, then the device will not get access to Office 365 apps. So to make use of to make use of the conditional access, all we had to do was we had to push a compliance policy from Intune. All the other policies would still be coming from SCCM like they were before. Only a compliance policy will be targeted from Intune. So as we know, compliance policy obviously is not going to make any change to the device. It is just going to evaluate the device and see whether the device is compliant and is adhering to the admin's policies or not. If the device is not compliant, the device would be marked as not compliant in the Intune portal. And that is when the conditional access would kick in. And conditional access will see that the device is not compliant as per the evaluation status from Intune. Therefore, it will block devices access to all the Office apps or to all the cloud resources, not just Office apps. So the point that we are actually stressing on why to transition to co-management is the best use and the best feature would be conditional access. That being said, there are many other features that we can make use of from Intune and get the security of cloud. But if I had to, this would for me actually be the selling point of enabling conditional access, of enabling co-management, that is making use of conditional access. Also, there are many real-time actions that we can take once co-management has been enabled, like we can do a remote factory reset or a wipe in case the device is stolen. Okay, that being said, if it's a Windows 10 device, we can also leverage something called autopilot. So there is a separate nugget on autopilot. You probably might want to refer to that. But what autopilot does is it customizes the out of the box experience of the end user. And as a part of out of the box experience, user gets all the softwares, all the applications, and the device might even be joined to the on-prem domain or the Azure AD, and the device will actually be enrolled to Intune. So that is also something. This is not please don't confuse this with the OSD deployment from SCCM, wherein we deploy the operating system. In Autopilot, we don't deploy the operating system per se, but we customize the operating system and make the system business ready as a part of out of the box experience. So that is also something which we can leverage using Intune, out of many other things that we can leverage once co-management is enabled. And we can also integrate Intune with TeamViewer. We have something called a TeamViewer integration, which we can leverage and then remotely manage the Windows 10 devices and see the screen. Okay. So guys, now let's just do a comparison between all the features that we had when we were making use of only SCCM to manage our devices versus the new capabilities that we have now when we are bringing SCCM into the mix and when we are making use of co-management. So when only SCCM was there in the picture, then this is all that we could do. We could do a OSD deployment, we could do a management of Win32 app, configure and deploy GPO, BitLocker management, hardware and software inventory, update management. So these are all the things that we could traditionally do when a device was being managed via SCCM. However, once we get our device co-managed, then these functionalities are still there, but along with that, we get a new set of added benefits. First and most important of them being conditional access and compliance. We can set up conditional access, and to any cloud resource, if the device is not compliant, the device will not have access. Along with that, we can make use of autopilot provisioning, which brings hardware deployment to a whole new level. Now we have something called a hybrid Azure AD join autopilot, which will actually join your device to the on-prem domain as well as a part of the out-of-the-box experience. So that is something which can be leveraged. We can leverage the advanced threat and security features. We can make use of the complete app management. We can deploy the Office suite. We can deploy a hell lot of applications from Intune now and get an inventory, get a report. We can make use of the analytics, and we can make use of the graph APIs, and all these comes into the mix once the device is co-managed. So the recommendation, as I've already said, even if we are not going to manage the device via Intune, the recommendation is, let's just get our device co-managed, and when we do decide, we can move the workload, and this all comes without any cost involved. So, guys, I just want to pause here for a moment and talk about coexistence. I know it's a new word out there, and we are not going to focus on coexistence, but I just want you guys to know that there is something called coexistence which also exists. So, in case of coexistence, what happens is, let's just say that there's a Windows 10 device which is being managed via SCCM, and the end user decides to enroll it to a third party MDM, not to Intune. In that case, the setup is known as coexistence. So at that point of time, the device is going to have two management agents. One is the config manager, which is talking to the config manager service or the config manager server, and the other is the third party agent, third party MDM agent, which is going to talk to the third party MDM server. And in this case, no sync happens between the configuration manager server and the third party MDM server. So this poses a challenge, and the challenge is, what about a scenario wherein config manager server and the third party MDM server both are trying to change the exact same attribute of the device? That can actually cause some issues, that can actually cause conflicts. So to rule that possibility out, what happens is, when the config manager agent detects that there is another third party MDM agent present in the device, some SCCM workloads by itself are moved into the read only mode. What it means is, in this case, the third party MDM is going to set the policies, set the attributes, set the configurations, and config manager is only going to extract the relevant reports. So in this case, the SCCM will go into read-only mode, and it will only be able to gather the inventories like hardware and software inventory, power management reporting, software metering, asset intelligence. It's only going to extract the reports and the configuration and the values that has been set. However, as far as setting the policies is concerned, everything will be set from the third party agent. So I mean, any kind of resource access policies that we were making, that would be made from like VPN, Wi-Fi, email profiles, deployment of certificates, deployment of applications, deployment of softwares, the endpoint protection, compliance policy, device configuration, deployment of office applications. Everything would be set from the third party agent, and SCCM would only be in the read only mode, wherein it will take care of getting the inventory and getting the reporting. This scenario is very rarely used. 9 out of 10 times we would encounter into a scenario wherein the device is enrolled to Intune. However, this also exists, and this is how it works. There is no sync that happens between config manager and the third party agent. All right. So now let's just take a look over how exactly this is done. Now let's just take a look over the Intune or the co-management architecture. Okay. So we have a device. Let's just say we have a Windows 10 device. Okay. So co-management, obviously, as I said before, is applicable only on Windows 10 devices, because co-management, as I said, means the device is getting managed via Intune as well as SCCM. SCCM can manage Windows 7 and 8 devices, however, Intune cannot. Intune can only manage Windows 10 devices. Therefore, co-management is applicable on Windows 10 devices only. Okay, so let's just say this is our device. This is our Windows 10 device, and this Windows 10 device has the config manager agent in it. Therefore, it is being managed via config manager. Okay, this device will also be enrolled to Intune. So therefore, you can see that this is a device. One ending of this device has the config manager agent. Therefore, it's connected to the configuration manager SCCM, and this device also has internet access. And this device is connected to the MDM. That is, it is connected to Intune over the cloud. Okay, this is the other way. So this is Intune service, and this is the SCCM. Okay, so let me just call it config manager. It's already written, but just for our understanding. So how are we managing the SCCM server? We are managing it using the SCCM console. And how are we managing the Intune service? We are managing the Intune service over the cloud from a web browser from via the Azure portal. Okay. So this is the setup. As I said, if we have any Windows 7 and Windows 8 devices, these devices are not co-managed because these devices cannot be managed via Microsoft Intune. Therefore, they just have one ending and they just have the config manager agent in them. And using this config manager agent, they are talking to the SCCM and they are getting the policies. Similarly, we have some mobile devices as well. And if you remember, I explicitly told you guys that this co-management feature is only for Windows 10 devices, not for uh, mobile devices. Okay, so we have some mobile devices as well. So obviously they have the other opening called the MDM. They don't have the config manager agent in them because, well, obviously they cannot be joined to the domain, and they are explicitly being managed via the Intune service. So this is what we have in the setup. We have the SCCM, we have the Intune, we have Windows 7 and 8 devices which are talking only with SCCM, we have the mobile devices which are only talking with Intune, and in between we have a Windows 10 device which is being managed by a configuration manager agent because the device is joined to the domain and has the SCCM client installed in it, and this device also has connectivity to the internet, and therefore we have enrolled this device to Intune as well. Therefore, this device is being managed via both. It has two openings. Okay. All right. So over here, you can see that it has access to the internet as well as to the on-premise. Okay. So now in order for us to manage this device via Intune service as well as SCCM, as you remember guys, I said that the, co-management means a state wherein this device can be managed by Intune service as well as SCCM both at the same point. However, the same policy cannot be delivered by Intune service and SCCM at the same point. So we have something called a co-management workload. Okay, and in this work we have divided the co-management workload into three parts. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3. Okay, so when we go to the SCCM console, we can actually set the workload. So let's just talk about the first workload, which is resource access policy. If we set the workload to SCCM, then it would mean that the resource access policies and everything that comes under resource access policies will be coming from SCCM onto the device, which means that if we have created a resource access policy 1 in Microsoft Intune, and if we have created a resource access policy 1 in SCCM, then it is going to be the resource access policy from SCCM which is going to get delivered to the device, and not the resource access policy which is created in Microsoft Intune. So this status of this workload determines that from where the policy is going to come to the device and is going to take effective. So let's just say, so what we can do is, traditionally the suggestion was enable co-management and then set the workload for compliance to Intune and all other workload to SCCM. What this would do is, the compliance policy will come from Intune to the device and all the other management will still be done via SCCM. Once the compliance policy comes to the device will be evaluated against that compliance policy which has been created in Microsoft Intune, and depending upon that, the device will be marked as compliant or not compliant in the Intune portal. And then, depending upon its compliance state, conditional access policy is going to judge the device and see if the device is compliant. It will have access to the office resources or the cloud resources. If the device is not compliant, it will not have access. Okay, so depending upon this co-management workload, depending upon where we have set it, so we can set the co-management workload either to SCCM or to Intune. And if we set a specific workload to Intune, then all the policies that are determined by that workload will be delivered to the device from Intune. And if we set it to SCCM, all the policies that are determined by that workload will be sent by SCCM. So I hope that this picture helps us understand how exactly the management is happening. So the management for Intune is happening from the Azure portal. Management for SCCM is happening from the config manager console. Windows 7 and 8 devices are only talking with SCCM. This device is Windows 10. It's talking to both. The mobile devices are talking only to Intune, and Microsoft Intune is the SaaS service which is hosted on Azure. Therefore, Azure is like the bigger bucket, and Microsoft Intune is the smaller bucket. So, and Microsoft Azure or AAD is something which wherein we are setting up the conditional access, which is coming into the device and making and evaluating whether the device is compliant or not. So please keep this picture in mind, and please remember what exactly a workload is, so that we can understand that, okay, if the workload is set to a specific MDM authority, not exactly MDM authority, the MDM authority, please keep in mind guys, is always going to be Microsoft Intune. In case of co-management, the MDM authority always remains Microsoft Intune, irrespective of which workload has been set where. Okay. All right. So now let's just talk about a scenario wherein we have to enable co-management. So guys, as you remember, let's just say that we have a scenario wherein we have the SCCM setup already in place, and the device needs to be enrolled to Intune. Okay. So one way of enrolling a device to Intune is manually. I mean, the user will have to go to start and then settings and then access work or school, and then put in his credential, his UPN, and the device will be enrolled to Intune. That's the manual way. Now let's just say that we have got a lot of devices, thousands of devices, and we want to enable co-management in them. So the devices already have the SCCM client. Now all the device needs to be done. All that needs to be done in the device is the device needs to be enrolled to Intune. So we don't want to do that manually. So one way, the other way of doing that is using the group policy. So if the device is joined to the domain, we can go to the Active Directory, and from there we can create a group policy, link it to the OU wherein the devices are present, and in the group policy we can enable auto enrollment to Intune. The third possibility is making use of the SCCM console. So from the SCCM console itself, we can enable enrollment to Intune. So once we go to the SCCM console, and once we go to the administration blade, and once we go to the co-management blade, over there we can actually we have to link our SCCM console to the Intune console, and then over there itself it gives us the option of enabling auto enrollment to Intune. So in that case, the end user's device which has the SCCM client in it will automatically enroll to Intune. Obviously there are some prerequisites and there are some checks which happen, but the device automatically enrolls to Intune without him having to enroll the device manually, or without the admin's task of creating a group policy. Okay. All right. So let's just quickly talk about the requirement, as in what the prerequisites that needs to be kept in mind while enabling co-management. So co-management, for enabling co-management, the config manager version needs to be 17.10 or higher. Windows devices version needs to be Windows 10 17.09 or higher. The machine should be hybrid Azure AD joined. So very often people just miss out on this part. but this is a prerequisite. So the machine needs to be hybrid Azure AD joined. The machine needs to be joined to the on-prem domain. Obviously, it would be joined to the on-prem domain because it is being managed via SCCM. And now if we want it to be managed via Intune as well, the machine needs to be joined to Azure as well. That's the state we refer to as hybrid Azure AD joined. The device is joined to the on-prem domain and the device is joined to the Azure. So this hybrid Azure AD join is a setup that we can do using a tool called Azure AD Connect. So there is a tool which is present called Azure AD Connect, which we can make use of, and then we can do the hybrid Azure AD join. Okay, so that being said, well, it goes without saying that the user needs to have an Intune subscription, meaning that there should be an EMS license which should be assigned to the user. As I've already discussed, the MDM authority needs to be Intune. So if the MDM authority is not Intune, if the MDM authority is SCCM, then we are actually not talking about a co-managed scenario. We are talking about a hybrid or a mixed scenario. Okay. Obviously, the device needs to be enrolled to Intune. The device needs to be registered with SCCM. The SCCM client needs to be there, and there should be Windows 10 auto enrollment should be enabled. This is not exactly a prerequisite. It will just make our lives easier. Okay, so that is the requirement. That is all from the requirement point of view. Now let's just talk about how exactly it happens at the backend. So as you guys remember, I said that the device, if a device is co-managed, it means that it's managed via SCCM and Intune at the same point. Okay, so well, let's just say that this is a fresh device. Okay, so there are two ways this device can possibly be co-managed. So for this device to be co-managed, as I said, it needs to be enrolled to Intune and needs to have a SCCM client. So the two ways would be, first, this fresh device is joined to the domain. Once it is joined to the domain, it gets the SCCM client installed in it. Once it gets the SCCM client installed in it and is being managed via SCCM, the device now gets enrolled to Intune. So when we say co-managed, or when we say there are two entities managing the device, we have to start from either one, right? We have to start from one and then bring the other into the picture. That is when the device gets managed via both. So it can be a case wherein the device is already being managed via SCCM and now we bring Intune into the picture. Now we enroll the device to Intune. That can be the first way. The second way can be the device is already being managed via Intune and now we push SCCM client onto the device. So the device needs to have Intune, the device needs to have SCCM, right? You can either go with the first approach, which says that device already has the SCCM client and the device is joined to the domain and the device is managed by SCCM client, the device is hybrid Azure AD joined, and then enroll this device to Intune service so that the device has both. Or the second way is the device is already enrolled to Intune and is joined to the Azure AD, and now we are pushing SCCM client onto this device so that it reaches this state of having Intune as well as SCCM client on it. Now the recommendation is encouraging users for the first use case, because the recommendation is taking the user to a position wherein the device can be managed over the cloud. That is, the device can be managed over Intune. So if the device is already being managed via Intune, then the recommendation is not having the user set up a SCCM administration or set up a SCCM server and then push a SCCM client onto the device. Exactly, if the user wants to do it, he might as well do it. But given that SCCM existed before Intune, more often than not, we are going to come up with this use case wherein SCCM is already there in the picture and now we are incorporating Intune into the device, not the other way around, which obviously is not the recommendation. Okay. All right. So so in this nugget, we are actually going to discuss the first scenario wherein the device is already being managed via SCCM and now we are enrolling the device to Intune, and 9.9 out of 10 cases, if not more, are going to be like this. Okay. However, the second case also exists, that is also there. It can also be made use of. There are some prerequisite which needs to be taken care of in case of this. So what the flow in this case is something like this. The device is already managed via Intune. We push the SCCM client to the device. And in this case, once the SCCM client is pushed to the device, the client communicates to the SCCM server via something called Cloud Management Gateway. Okay, so CMG is like kind of an that liaison on to which the device talks, and CMG then redirects the traffic to the MP. Okay, so given that the device is on the internet and the SCCM server or the management point is on the intranet, the end device cannot directly talk to the management point, therefore it talks to the CMG, and behind the CMG is the management point. So if you're from the SCCM background, this explanation might make some sense. So, well, for the second scenario to work, we need something called a CMG. There are some other prerequisites as well. That is, I mean, the communication for the CMG needs to be encrypted. Therefore, there are some certificates that we need to export from our on-prem CA, and there are some certificates that needs to be provisioned. We also will have to set up something called a CDP or a cloud distribution point in order to push software to devices over the internet. So, I mean, what I'm saying is I'm not going to drill down on this use case. This is what we are going to focus on, and we are going to presume that the device is already being managed via SCCM and is joined to the on-prem, and now the requirement is managing the device from Intune and getting into a co-managed state. Okay. So this is just a snapshot of for the second use case. So if we want to push SCCM client onto device, then I mean we are going to go to Intune, and then we have an option of uploading the MSI. So we are going to upload the CCM setup MSI from Intune as a LOB application, and then we are going to put in the command whatever needs to be put in, and this is going to be installed in the device. Once it is installed, the device is going to communicate with the CMG to get the policies. Okay. So now let's just talk about how exactly the management happens. So if you remember in the previous slide, in one of the previous slides, I told you that if a device in the architecture, I told you. So let's just go back to the architecture. Over here, I explained that this is a device which is managed via Intune and is managed via SCCM. So the way we determine so as I said, let me just reiterate, the same device is managed via SCCM and Intune, but the same policy cannot be determined via SCCM and Intune. It will be pushed by either SCCM or Intune. So that decision is made via the co-management workload. So we have something called co-management workload, and this workload determines the policy is going to come from where, which we are going to see later on. If the workload is set to SCCM, policy will come from SCCM, or the other way around. So we can set the co-management workload to either configuration manager, which is there by default, wherein the config manager manages the pushes the policy. We can set it to Intune. In this case, the policies are pushed via Intune. We can set it to pilot as well. So what happens is, let's just say that we want to test out co-management. So we don't want to move the workload for all the devices to Intune at one point. So what we do is we move it to Intune for a pilot collection and then test it out. If that works, then we can move it for other collections as well. So this is like by default. So right now you can see that this is the workload, and right now after we enable co-management, all the workload are in SCCM. This is the configuration manager. You can see that the workload is in SCCM. For compliance policy, the workload is in SCCM. For resource access policy, the workload is in SCCM. For Windows update, it is in SCCM. For endpoint protection, it is in SCCM. So now we as an admin have the option of moving this workload from here to here. So we can just drag and drop it. So if we drag this workload from compliance policy to pilot Intune, then all the devices in the pilot Intune collection will get the compliance policy from Intune. However, since these workloads are still in SCCM, all the devices, may that be in the pilot collection or may that be in any other collection, will continue to receive these policies, resource access policies, Windows update policies, endpoint protection policies from SCCM. This movement can be done back and forth. So I can, if I want, I can move the compliance policy over here, compliance policy workload over here, and the endpoint protection workload over here. And tomorrow, if I want, I can just switch them back. So this is like two-way. Depending upon when the admin wants, he can switch the workload. Now let me just take a moment and explain this again, the difference between pilot Intune and Intune. Let's just say that we have got 10 devices in our environment and we want them co-managed. So instead of if I move the workload of compliance policy from config manager to Intune, then all the 10 devices will be co-managed. However, if I don't want to affect all the 10 devices at the same point of time, if I just want to test it out on 2 devices, then what I'll do is I will make a collection. I'll call this a pilot collection and add the 2 devices to this collection. Okay, and now once I've added the 2 devices to the pilot collection, what I'll do, I'll move the workload from config manager to pilot Intune. So then compliance policy will come from Intune only for these 2 devices, the devices which are there in the pilot collection. All the other devices will continue receiving the policies from config manager. Okay. All right. So now let's just talk about what exactly the flow is. What exactly happens right from the start till the very end, right from when a device joins the domain to the point wherein it gets a policy either from SCCM or from Intune and the device gets co-managed. So obviously for this to happen, the prerequisite is we need to have a config manager server in our environment and the SCCM needs to be set up already. The device needs to be on-prem domain joined. Obviously, if the device already has the SCCM client and is being managed via SCCM, then the device is already joined to the on-prem domain. And before any of the co-management stuff can happen, the device needs to be hybrid Azure AD joined as well. So if you remember the prerequisite, one of the prerequisite was that the Windows device needs to be hybrid Azure AD joined. So this hybrid Azure AD joined can be done by using a tool called Azure AD Connect. So this tool needs to be installed. Once the tool is installed, we have to enable the hybrid Azure AD join feature, and then all the devices are going to be synced to the Azure as well and are going to be joined to the domain. So this is a prerequisite. There is a separate nugget that I have done on Azure AD Connect. Probably you can refer to that to find out how exactly hybrid Azure AD join can be enabled. So these three are in a way prereqs. So we have to make sure that these three are already met with. Now, let's just say that we had a fresh device. The device was joined to the on-prem domain. The device had the SCCM client. The device was joined to the on-prem domain and the device did not have the SCCM client. The SCCM server was already there in place and the device was hybrid Azure AD joined. Okay. So we are talking about a scenario of co-management wherein the device is first going to be managed via SCCM and then it is going to be enrolled via Intune. Okay, so the first thing the SCCM admin will do is run a SCCM discovery. Once he does a SCCM discovery, he can then push a client installation from the SCCM console. Okay, once he pushes the once he pushes that, the device will be managed via SCCM now. Okay, the first step is SCCM admin doing a discovery from the SCCM console. He will be able to discover all the devices joined to the domain in the on-prem, and then he will push the SCCM client. Okay, once he pushes the SCCM client, the SCCM client is going to get installed, and for that you can actually check the CCM setup log. If the CCM setup log exists, the CCM setup log finishes with an exiting with return code 0, that means that the device is now healthy and the device is now being managed via SCCM. So the device is now managed via SCCM, okay? And we can see the SCCM related registry values as well. And if we go back to the SCCM console, the device will be reporting as healthy. Okay, and if we go to the device, open up the control panel, from there we can open up the SCCM applet also. And the applet at this point of time, please note, is going to say that co-management is disabled and the co-management capabilities is one. We are going to understand what exactly co-management capabilities are and why is this showing as disabled. Obviously co-management will show as disabled because until now we have only set up the configuration manager server, joined the device to the on-prem domain. We have hybrid Azure AD joined the device. We have run the SCCM discovery and installed the SCCM client. And the device is now showing up in the SCCM client. I mean, the SCCM console, and the device can be managed from the SCCM console. So that is where we are at as of this moment. Now, once the client is installed in the device, now the aim is starting with the co-management approach. So we can do it two ways. Either we can enable co-management for just some devices, or we can enable co-management for all the devices in our environment. If you don't want to do it for all the devices and you want to do it for some devices to begin with, then what we'll have to do is we'll have to make a collection of those devices. We'll call it pilot collection and then enable co-management for those pilot devices. Okay, so let's just say that in the SCCM console, if I go to device collections and I'm making a pilot device collection, okay, or I mean, that is not mandatory. I mean, if you want it for all the devices, then you don't need to make that pilot collection. Now we need to go into co-management. So this is a screenshot from the SCCM console. Again, if you're from SCCM background, this might sound a little familiar. So we are going to go into administration, cloud services, and then we are going to click on co-management. Once we click on co-management, we have to sign in using our global credentials. Okay, so this is wherein we are establishing that trust or that communication channel between our SCCM console and our Intune console. Okay, so once the client is installed, this is optional. Now we have to enable the co-management in our SCCM console. We have to provide the tenant admin credential to make sure that the connection is established. This is a prerequisite. Auto enrollment has to be enabled. Okay, so I'm going over here and I'm clicking on sign in. I'm providing my user credential and password. Once I provide my user credential and password, the next thing that comes up is enablement. So in the enablement, it actually asks us that whether you want to target co-management on all the devices or on a pilot collection of devices. If I click on pilot collection, then it will target it on the pilot collection only. If I do it on all devices, then all the devices are going to be co-managed. And if you guys paid close attention to Brad's video, he was saying that enabling co-management is just 4 clicks. So that is what we are going to see in the demo as well. We are just going to click 4 times and co-management will be ready out of the box. Okay, so until now what we have done is we have done this and we have done this. So the co-management has been enabled for devices in a pilot group. Okay, so we have enabled co-management, but at this point of time, the device is not enrolled to Intune, right? The device is only SCCM managed. So before co-management can be enabled, the first thing that needs to happen is the device needs to be enrolled to Intune. That is when it will come into that state of being co-managed. That is when it is going to come into the state of having SCCM as well as Intune on the same device. Okay, so the first thing that needs to happen right now is that the device needs to be enrolled to Intune. Okay, so if you paid attention to this slide wherein we were enabling co-management, over here it says that to enable co-management for devices managed by config manager, configure automatic enrollment. Obviously that is a prerequisite. And over here it is saying that automatic enrollment in Intune. So it is saying what this means is the devices in the collection, either all the devices or the devices in the pilot collection, are going to be co-managed, but before they are co-managed, they are going to be enrolled to Intune automatically. Obviously, a device will be co-managed after the device has both SCCM and Intune. So first thing that this is going to do, enabling co-management is going to do, is it is going to enroll the devices to Intune. So that is the first part, first thing that needs to happen. So what this does is, once we do this, a policy is created, a configuration policy is created by the SCCM server and is sent to the devices. Now the devices are not enrolled to Intune, the devices don't know where the Intune service is, but the device is still being managed via SCCM. Therefore, the configuration policy will successfully reach to the device. The policy will contain two information. The first information which the policy is going to contain is that the device needs to get enrolled to Intune. So let's just say there's an end device. The device was conventionally being managed by SCCM. It suddenly receives a configuration policy. The policy obviously can be tracked like any other policy in the policy PV log. So this policy is going to tell to the device that now you need to get yourself enrolled to Intune. Okay. So how does the processing happen at the backend? How exactly the device gets enrolled to Intune? We will talk about that later. But the device gets enrolled to Intune at this point of time. The second information which that policy contains is the workload setting. Okay. So in this screenshot, let me just show you guys again. So in the screenshot over here, all we did was we selected the pilot or the collection that we had. We did a next and then we did a finish. By default, all the workloads were set in SCCM. They were not set in co-management. So that information is also going to travel in the configuration policy that SCCM is automatically going to create and deploy to the devices. Once that reaches the device is now co-managed. So at this point, the device is co-managed. We are co-managed at this point of time. So now if I go to the device and open the applet again, I am going to see that co-managed is enabled. Okay, no other change has happened. Nothing is coming from Intune at this point of time. The device is still managed via SCCM. All the workloads are still set at SCCM. The only change that happened was the device automatically got enrolled to Intune because of this automatic enrollment in Intune, because the device was a part of this collection. And since the device is now enrolled to Intune, it says that co-management is enabled, although all the policies at this point of time are still coming from SCCM. Okay, so at this point of time, we would be able to do some things from Intune. So as I said, the device at this point of time is managed by SCCM and the workloads are in SCCM. So all the policies will come from SCCM. However, we can still carry out these activities from the Intune portal. So, all right, let me just show you the screenshot again. Yes. So at this point of time, we will be able to see that the device is, since the device is enrolled to Intune, an entry of that device will be created in the Intune portal, and the device will say MDM/config manager agent. So by default, if the device is managed via Intune, it only says MDM. However, since in this case the device is managed via both, it says MDM/config manager agent. At this point of time, the device is actually being managed only via SCCM because all the workloads are still at SCCM. But we have the functionality and the ability of managing this device via Intune as well. Therefore, it says MDM/config manager agent, and irrespective of where the workloads are, if co-management is enabled, if the device is enrolled to Intune and has the SCCM client in it, then it's always going to show mdm/config manager agent. An interesting point is, an interesting question would be, what exactly is this UPN? We are going to talk about this later, that how exactly this UPN comes in. But for now, just know that the device is enrolled to Intune, and this is the entry that you're going to see. Okay. All right. So at this point of time, if we go to the device and if we check the co-management handler log, it is going to tell us that the device was successfully enrolled and that all the workloads are still managed via SCCM. So at this point of time, if I go to the device and if I take a look over the co-management handler log, it is going to say that enrolling the device to MDM and the MDM enrollment successfully happened. Okay. And yeah, that's all. After the This is one of the things that we need to see. Okay, so after the device was before the co-management happened, after the device was after the device had the SCCM client installed in it, if we would have gone into the SCCM registry setup, this is wherein this is the information that we would be able to see. Now let's just talk about how exactly the enrollment is happening, because as you know, for enrollment to happen, there needs to be a user, right? There needs to be a user who needs to provide his credential, and that user needs to have a EMS license assigned to him. Okay, that's the only way. If the device needs to be co-managed, that is, if the device needs to be enrolled to Intune, the enrollment needs to happen, and the enrollment needs to happen using a credential that has EMS license assigned to it. So what exactly happens is, as I said, once we have enabled co-management from the portal, a config manager policy is sent to the device, and that device is told that now you need to be enrolled to Intune. Okay, but the device is not enrolled to Intune yet. So what the user has to do now is that the user needs to log out of the device of the Windows 10 machine and log into the machine again using a credential which has a EMS license assigned to it. So let's just think about a scenario wherein the end user was logged into the device using a credential which was not having a EMS license assigned, or he was logged into the device using a local account. At this point of time, the policy would reach to the device, since the device can still communicate with the SCCM console, but the enrollment will not happen. The enrollment will be triggered only when a user logs into the machine who has a EMS license assigned to it. So now when a user logs into the machine, logs into the device, not a local admin but a cloud only user, it doesn't need to be cloud only user, it needs to be user in the cloud. It can be created in the cloud, or it can be synced to the cloud using Azure AD Connect. With a EMS license, the device gets enrolled. Okay, so once the device gets enrolled, since the enrollment is happening automatically, in case of SCCM it gets enrolled using foo user. Okay, so let me just show you guys the location for enrollment registry. So this is the location for enrollment. We have to go to HKLM software Microsoft enrollment, and over here a key is created when the device gets enrolled. Okay, this is going to get created irrespective of whether the device was enrolled using SCCM or using group policy, or the user went to start and settings and did a manual enrollment. This entry is going to get created. Okay, however, if the device was enrolled using SCCM, then in that case you are going to see an entry typically like this, that that would say that config manager enrollment happened. And in case of UPN, you're going to see something like a foo user of my tenant, foo user @nuggetlabs.onmicrosoft.com. So you can think about it as a automatic as a service account, if you would call it, or an inbuilt account that is being used to do the auto enrollment. However, it doesn't mean that once the co-management is enabled, the device will get automatically enrolled irrespective. The device needs to be logged in using a account which has EMS license assigned to it. Once a user logs in, then this enrollment happens. It is just that in case of enrollment via SCCM, the name of the user over here is not the end user or the user who logged in, but it is a foo user. However, the entry that gets created in the Intune portal correctly reflects the person who enrolled the device. So I know that nobody enrolled the device manually, but the person who logged into the device and the person who had the EMS credential is the one whose credentials are actually going to be used to enroll the device to Intune automatically. So what happened was I logged into the device, I enabled co-management. I logged into the device using a credential called god@nuggetlabs on Microsoft.com. Once I logged in using those credentials, the device was automatically enrolled to Intune. So now let's just say that this user logs off and some other user logs in. That's not going to make any difference. The first user who logs in after co-management is enabled onto the device gets enrolled using that user's credential. Okay, and as I said, if we take a look over the co-management handler log at this point of time, we are going to see that the enrollment happened and the enrollment got succeeded. We can also track the event viewer logs. So this event viewer logs will be present irrespective of which way the device got enrolled. So if we go to event viewer and then if we go to application and services logs, Microsoft Windows device management, then over there we can see that this OMADS session was successfully ended, which means that the device was successfully enrolled to Intune. So this is where we are at this point of time. SCCM client is present in the device. The device got automatically enrolled to Intune. Once the device was automatically enrolled to Intune, the workload settings was also sent to the device as a part of a policy. And at this point of time, all the workloads are at SCCM. However, we can still manage the device using, we can still send a lock, wipe, or a reset. And the enrollment actually happened automatically when a user actually logged into the device using a EMS license. Having a EMS license. So after this configuration policy reached the device, a user logged in needs to be a cloud user with a EMS license assigned, and then he will be enrolled. The device will get automatically enrolled. Now, if the user goes to the enrollment registry, as I showed, he will be able to see the registry entry saying that the device is enrolled. It will show foo user over there, not the name of the user. Implying that the enrollment happened using SCCM. And if he checks the manual way, that is, he goes to starts and then settings and then account, he will be able to see his account over there, the account that was used to enroll the machine. Okay, so now let's just see that as I already said, the device will now be visible in the portal as Intune/config manager. So now if we change a workload, as I said, all the workload were initially, when we configured co-management, all the workload were present in SCCM or the config manager. Now, if we change a workload from the SCCM console, a policy is sent to the device again. So SCCM console will again trigger the same configuration policy and will send it again. So first time when we enabled auto enrollment, a configuration policy was sent to the device, and this policy contained two information: first, that the device needs to get enrolled, and second, the status of the workload settings. From this point onwards, every time we change the workload, every time we switch the workload, the same configuration policy will be sent to the device again and again, which is going to contain the latest information, that what exactly the workload is. Okay, and that is something which can be tracked in the co-management handler log. So every time the workload is changed, the same config policy is triggered. The workload merge, as in the old value is striped and the new value is populated, and Depending upon the workload, the device understands where it needs to go to get a policy. For example, if the workload for compliance is set to Intune, then the device will get that config policy from from SCCM. It will understand that, okay, for anything related to compliance, I need to go to Intune and not SCCM. If all the other workloads are set to SCCM, then the device will contact SCCM to get those policies. However, a sync between SCCM and Intune will never happen. Okay, so let's just say this was the workload. By default, it was set all to config manager. If I were to change the workload, the configuration policy, which is by default created, would be triggered and sent to the device again, and the device would behave accordingly. So this is the configuration policy I'm talking about, and it is same for the tenant each time. The ID of the configuration policy is going to be the same. And as over here, as you can see that the configuration policy was sent and I changed the one of the workload. So by default, the value of the co-management capabilities was 1. However, now it is 3. So now it is going to say that merging the workload, and now the co-management capability is 3, maximum possibility is 55. Okay, so every time I change it, the same configuration policy is going to be triggered and it's going to send to the device. And depending upon that, the value of co-management capabilities in the device is going to change. What is co-management capability? I have already discussed this co-management. This is co-management capability. So this co-management capability actually implies what is the status of workload. So if we have moved just one workload, the co-management capability, the number of co-management capability, this number would be different. If we are moving 2 workloads, this number would be different. It's actually a calculation that happens at the backend. So by default, as I said, all the workload are in SCCM. So no workload has been moved. So the number that you will see over here is 2 to the power 0. That is 1. Okay. We will actually understand how later on how exactly this calculation of workload is done. But for now, let's just understand that every time we change the workload, a configuration policy is sent to the device, and the configuration policy is going to tell the device to update its co-management capabilities depending upon the workload. Okay. So now let me just go back over here. The device knows now whom to talk to depending upon a specific workload. Now let's just talk about what happens at the background. What is the background processing that is happening every time we are changing the workload? Okay, so as I already said, as we have already discussed, no real sync is happening between SCCM and Intune. So once we are enabling or disabling a workload, or once we are not enabling, disabling, once we are switching the workload, a policy is reaching to the device, the configuration policy is containing the information of what the co-management capability is. And depending upon the co-management capability, the device is able to understand where it needs to go to. Okay. All right. So the value of, how do we get the value of that configuration policy is what I'm going to show you guys later on. But for now, the client receives the policy, gets notified that now it needs to talk to Intune or SCCM depending upon what the value is. It is the client that does all the work, that is determine whom to talk to, unlike in case of hybrid wherein a sync was happening. So let me just show you guys this. So if we go to co-management, and then if we right click on this is the connection that we have made, and go to properties, that is wherein we will be able to see the co-management workloads. However, if we click on this connection and then click on view XML, then the XML is going to open up and it actually contains the configuration policy. This is the configuration policy which is sent to the device each time. The first time the configuration policy is going to be sent, it's going to tell the devices that you need to get yourself enrolled to Intune. The second time, and all the future scenarios, and every time that we move the co-management workload, the same configuration policy with this ID is going to be triggered to the device, and which is going to contain the latest version of the latest scenario of where exactly the workload needs to be. Okay, so from here we can actually get the policy ID. We can also check the policy PV log, which actually will also have this policy configuration policy ID, and it's going to show that whether this policy is deployed to the device or not. So let's just talk about a scenario wherein we have set the configuration. I mean, we have set the configuration perfectly fine. The co-management workload was set and the connection was established, but still the device did not get the correct workload, or still the device did not get enrolled to Intune. One of the troubleshooting that we can do at this point of time was check the policy PV log to see whether the configuration policy ever got deployed or not to the device. Okay, for each workload, so these are actually referred to as workload. So for 1802 there are 4 workloads. If we upgrade our SCCM console to 1806, the workload will increase to from 4 to 6. If we upgrade our SCCM from 1806 to 1902, it is still going to stay at 6. If we upgrade it to 1906, it is still going to stay at 6. However, 1906 has some more it gives us more granular approach while setting a workload. It can help us set it for a specific group and not for all the groups. However, as of this moment, 1906 is still in preview. Therefore, I don't want to get into that. Okay, all right. So policy PV log, it can be used for tracking it, and this was the XML. And then if you want to check the log for a specific workload, let's just say that we have changed the resource access workload and not the other workloads. So that can be tracked in the co-management handler log, as well as it can also be tracked in the CI agent log. So for each workload, we have a log, and we can check these logs as well as the co-management handler log and the policy PV log to see whether a policy is being delivered to the device correctly or not. So earlier, before when the device only had the SCCM client in it and we did not set up the co-management, the co-management capabilities was 1, which is 2 to the power 0, which means everything was being managed via SCCM, and co-management was in disabled state. However, later on, once we connected our SCCM console to the to our tenant, and once we did the auto enrollment, and once we added the device to the pilot group, and once we enabled co-management, the co-management was enabled. However, at this point of time, the co-management capabilities was still set at 1, which is 2 to the power 0, which means that everything is still being managed via SCCM and not via Intune. Just need to keep a couple of things in mind while this all happens. When we enable co-management, as I already said, cannot stress on this anymore. No sync is happening, unlike in case of hybrid. The the SCCM, the authority is still Intune. It never is, or it never was SCCM. Okay. When the client receives the policy, it gets notified whether it needs to talk to SCCM or Intune. It is the client that does all the determination of whether it needs to talk to Intune or whether it needs to talk to SCCM, depending on the basis of the workload. We can check the policy PV log if we have enabled the co-management, but we don't see anything on the client end. Co-management capabilities, well, as I said earlier, is basically a calculation of how many workloads are enabled to Intune or how many workloads are present in SCCM. So every time we move a workload to Intune, the value of co-management capability changes, and it gets deployed to the device. The device takes a look at the co-management capabilities and comprehends that, okay, if the co-management capability is 55, that means all the workload must be moved, and therefore I need to go to Intune to get all the policies. Okay, guys, so now I want to take a moment and discuss in detail how exactly the auto enrollment to Intune is happening via SCCM. So, guys, until now we have discussed that when we add a device onto that pilot collection and enable the auto enrollment for that pilot collection, the device gets automatically enrolled to Intune when a user logs in who has the EMS license assigned to him. So, how exactly is the enrollment happening in this case? So, the logic behind the auto enrollment in this case is similar to how exactly the auto enrollment happens via group policy. So the logic the logic remains the same, the flow remains the same, irrespective of whether the auto enrollment is happening via group policy or via SECM. So what happens in both the cases is that a scheduled task is created which takes care of the enrollment. So uh, if we go into the task scheduler and then Microsoft Windows and then Enterprise MGMT, over there we will be able to see that a scheduled task is created with the name schedule created by enrollment client for automatically enrolling in MDM from AAD properties. So this scheduled task will be created if the device gets the group policy, or this scheduled task will be created when the device gets that configuration policy from SECM, which tells that device that you now need to get enrolled to Intune. So what this scheduled task does is the scheduled task runs an exe called the device enroller .exe, and this device enroller dot and over here you can see that there are many other tasks created as well. So initially there is this one task created, but after that there are many other tasks created as well which do the same job. So over here you can see that schedule 1 created by enrollment client, schedule 2 created by enrollment client, there is some schedule to run for OMADM client, and what it is effectively doing is it is running the device enroller.exe present in the C drive Windows System 32. So if we go into that C drive Windows System 32, we can actually see that this exe is used for API. The description of that exe is API for MDM enrollment. So when this exe runs, that is when the enrollment happens automatically using the credentials that were used to log into the device, provided that those credentials have a EMS license assigned to it. There is a catch to that. We will discuss that catch later on. But until now, let's just understand how exactly the auto enrollment is happening in case of SECM. It's creating a scheduled task. That scheduled task can be seen over here, and that scheduled task is running in exe, and that exe takes care of enrolling devices to Intune using the credentials. And once the scheduled task runs, that can also be tracked in the event viewer, in the event logs as well, which will have this ID of the task, which will say that the task started running and then the task finished running. Okay guys, so now I want to take a moment and discuss userless enrollment. So in the flow that we have discussed until now, what was happening was that the device was added into the pilot collection, and when the user was logging in, that is when the scheduled task was doing its job and it was enrolling the device to Intune using his credentials. However, recently there is something called a userless enrollment as well. Now I'm not exactly sure whether it existed earlier also or not, but now it does, although there is no documentation explaining the same. But this is how things are spanning out. So when if the user who is logging into the device has a EMS license assigned to it, the device gets seamlessly enrolled to Intune. The device gets attributed to him, the first person who logs in. If you were to log off now and any other user were to log in, that wouldn't make any difference. Okay. However, after a certain amount of time, if only a local admin is logging into the device each time, in that case also, if the device is part of the pilot group, the device gets enrolled to Intune. And in this case, the device gets enrolled as a non-user affinity. You can think of this state as just like a deb device without user affinity. Similarly, the Windows device is going to be enrolled without any user affinity, but the device is going to get enrolled. We are going to see all the event logs, how that happens. The device will be shown in the Intune portal as well. So let's just take a look over the normal flow of log. This is the co-management handler log. Okay, so this was taken from a device which is at a state wherein the device is part of the pallet collection and auto enrollment has been targeted onto that pallet collection. Now I log into the device as a user who is a administrator in the device but is not having EMS license assigned to it. Okay, so when typically we do that, we are going to see something like this, which says that the license of the user is in bad state, blocking the enrollment, which would make sense. And over here it is considering the username and password of the AAD credential of the user, and that does not have a that does not have a EMS license assigned to it. So we will be able to see logs like this, which would say that the license of the user is in bad state, so a couple of times. So over here you can see that it is trying 2 out of 3 times, and then it will try 3 out of 3 times, wherein it is going to say that the license is bad. So this cycle of 1 out of 2, 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 3 is going to happen a couple of times. And then since the enrollment is not going to happen, we are going to see something like this, which is going to say the device is not enrolled to Intune. Okay, so now once this cycle happens 2 or 3 times, and every time it fails, then we are going to see something like this. So over here you can see that it tried a couple of times. This is, I think, the second or the third cycle. Then it says that in trying 2 out of 3 times, the license of the user is in bad state, which is blocking the enrollment, and then it is using the AAD credential. And then we see something like this, which says that retry period for user logon is over. Next time a user logs on, the enrollment will be triggered without randomization. So probably there is a retry period. I'm not exactly sure how the duration in minutes or hours, how many times it actually tries or retries this 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 3, how many times it does. But there is apparently a retry period for which it is going to automatically try to enroll the device to Intune. It is going to check the AAD credential of the user who is logged in and try to enroll. If in this duration the user who logs into the device has a EMS license assigned, then the device gets enrolled by him and attributed to him in Intune. Otherwise, at the end of the retry period, we get something like this, which says that a user log on the enrollment will be triggered without randomization next time a user logs in. So let's just say that now after some time I log off and I log into the device again using a credential which has EMS license assigned to it, then obviously the device is going to get enrolled to Intune using my credential. But let's just say that now I log off, and after a certain amount of time I again log in using the same credential or any other credential which still does not have an EMS license assigned to it. In that case, we are going to see the same logs repetitively, which is still going to try, and we are going to see the same logs, this line again and again for some time, which is going to say that the retry period for user logon is over. The next time a user logs on, enrollment will be triggered without randomization. Let's just say I log off again and again I log in using the same credential which does not have the EMS license assigned to it. We'll typically see the same message again. So that again is going to happen for a specific number of time, and then we will see something like this, which is going to say no randomization for user logon since the retry period is over. Enrollment time is now. So over here we were able to see that the retry period for user logon was over, and it was waiting for the user to log in again. So after the user logged in for a couple of times, I'm not exactly sure about the count, but after the user logged in probably 3 or 4 times, it tried to enroll the device again using that user credential. But since that user did not have the EMS license again, then finally we are going to see a message like this, which says that no randomization for user logon since the retry period is over. And then the next time it retries, the enrollment is going to be successful. Okay, so at this point, until this point, just from the starting, right from here till here. So over here you can see that actually it was not on the same day. So it all started on 17/7, and over we are at this state wherein the enrollment succeeded on 18/7. I mean, in this duration of 24 hours, my machine was powered off and then powered on. Probably if the machine is powered on entire time, then it might not take so much of time. But what I'm trying to get at is, in this duration of 24 hours, I did not log into the device even once using a credential which had the EMS license assigned to it. However, we see that after a certain span of time, the device did get enrolled to Intune. So over here you can see that MDM enrollment is succeeded, and then you can see that the device is getting the value of co-management capabilities as well. So it's getting a co-management capability of 33, and the maximum value can be 255, obviously. So which we will talk about later. One more interesting thing over here, you can see that before the MDM enrollment succeeds, it says that it is trying to enroll, and it seems that it is trying to enroll using the AAD device credential. However, earlier when it was trying to enroll, it seems that it was trying to use the user credentials, which might be something related. I mean, this is just something which I noticed. So over here we are at a state wherein the device did get enrolled successfully to Intune, even though the user who logged in did not have a EMS license assigned to it. Okay, so this is just a breakdown of the flow of log. So as you can see, first time when the user logged into the device, it tried to enroll, but it was not able to. It said that license of the user is in bad state, will retry in 15 minutes. This is try 1 of 3. It will do 2 of 3. It will do 3 of 3. It will happen the whole cycle will happen a couple of times at a gap of 15 minutes each. And if it still doesn't happen, then at one point we are going to see that retry period for user logon is over. Next time a user logs on, the enrollment will be triggered without randomization. And next time the user logs in, again, if he does not have the EMS license assigned, we will be seeing this message again. So again, this cycle will also carry out a couple of times, and then finally we will see something like this, which will say that no randomization for user logon since the retry period is over, and then the enrollment will happen successfully. And at this point of time, it says that AAD device credential. Okay, so again, this is something which is not yet quite documented, so I'm not exactly sure how many times does it exactly retry, and what is the time span for which it will hold on until the userless device enrollment happens. But this is something which does happen. So for me, it happened within a span of 24 hours, until which it waited and it did the retry, and finally the enrollment did happen. Alternatively, I did it in 4 or 5 machines. Once it was successful on one device, and on all those 4 or 5 machines the userless enrollment did happen, but I was able to see a variation in log depending upon the scenario. So in one of the cases I was able to see, so over here you can see at 1548 it says that queuing the enrollment timer to fire at 1633, and then at 1633 it says that enrollment randomization timer fired, and then at 1633 itself the device gets successfully enrolled to Intune using the same device credentials. So there was a little variation in the log. Probably it depends upon at what time the user is logging in and how many times the user has logged in. But as I said, within a span of 24 hours in all the 4 or 5 cases, I was able to get the device enrolled to Intune with as userless. And in both the cases, I did not use a credential that had a EMS license assigned to it. Okay, so once the device is enrolled, so this is a difference. So this device was enrolled using a user credential which had a EMS license assigned to it. However, in this device, Extra Client 2, I never logged into this device using a credential that had a EMS license. So the variation is something like this over here. Even though the workload even though both the devices are in the same palette collection and the workload is set to Intune for compliance, in this case we see that it says that for compliance see configuration manager. However, in this case it says device is compliant. In this case it is attributed to a user. The UPN is there, so is the email ID. However, in this case there is no UPN associated, so no UPN or no user ID is associated with this user, hence the device is in userless state. If we dig deep into the device, we see that for the first device extra client 1, the management name is something like the name of the user who has enrolled the device, then the operating system, and then the time and then the time at which the device actually got enrolled to Intune. So this is the naming convention that we follow. The management name and the device name obviously is the host name, and it is enrolled by this user. However, in case of the user less device that got enrolled, the device name was there. However, the management name had something like this, which seems to be something like a ID and then the operating system. So in place of this, in place of the user name, we see some ID over here. And in case of enrolled by user, this is empty, signifying that the device is not attributed to a user, meaning the device is in userless state. So guys, let me just give it to you in a nutshell of the various possibilities and the various outcomes that we will be experiencing depending upon who is logged in and when exactly the enrollment is triggered. If the logged in user is a cloud user, when I say cloud user, it can be a user created on the cloud or it can be a user created on-prem and then synced to the cloud. In both the cases, if the logged in user is a cloud only user with EMS license assigned to it, that's the important part. In that case, the enrollment happens instantly. However, if the user who is and the device gets tagged with a user, so the enrollment will happen in the first attempt itself. And once the enrollment is done, when we'll go into the Intune portal, we'll be able to see the UPN of the user that was used to enroll the device. However, if the user who was logged in was a cloud user but did not have a EMS license assigned to him, or he was a local admin. In both the cases, obviously, if he's a local admin, then obviously he wouldn't have a EMS license. So in both the cases, the device will eventually get enrolled, and the device will be enrolled as you can say it will be enrolled without user affinity, meaning that there will be no user assigned to this device. And when we'll go into the Intune portal, we'll be able to see that there is no user attributed to the device. However, as we saw, there was a little variation on the timeline. In case of a local admin, the enrollment took a lot of time. However, in case of the cloud only user without EMS license, it was considerably faster. However, in both the cases, the expectation is in both the cases, the enrollment will eventually happen and the enrollment will happen without user affinity. However, depending upon the case, you might in some cases see that it's triggering enrollment many a times, and then it is giving you a log saying that enrollment was triggered, enrollment has been queued, enrollment failed due to bad license. However, in some cases you might see that it tried for a couple of times, and in the third time itself it will try using the Azure AD device credential and it will get enrolled automatically. So the conclusion, so this is the conclusion from here. The considering factor or the determining factor here is the EMS license. If it's not there, the device is not tagged to the user and is userless. However, if it is there, then the device is enrolled the usual way and the correct way. Okay, so now I just want to take a moment and do a deep dive on the workloads. That exactly how exactly is the calculation happening for the co-management workloads? I have written a blog on that. It is publicly available. You might as well wanna take a moment and go over that. But for now, let me just present to you guys the extract of that blog. So co-management capabilities, as I said, is a number, and it is possible for us to calculate the value of co-management capabilities, which corresponds to the number of workload moved to Pilot or Intune. So every time, as I said, every time we move a workload from SCCM to Intune or Intune to SCCM, the co-management capability changes. Okay. So therefore, just thus by looking at the workload, we can calculate what is going to be the value of co-management capabilities, or by looking at the co-management capabilities, we can figure out what is the set of workload. Okay. So this is the calculation that is done for 1802. For SCCM version 1802, this is the calculation that is done. Each workload over here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, each has a value associated with it. So compliance policy has 2, resource access policy has 2 to the power 2, that is 4, Windows update policy has 2 to the power 4, that is 16, and endpoint protection has 2 to the power 5, that is 32. Okay, so if we move this workload from here to here, then this value is going to be this is going to be the value for co-management capabilities. If we move both of them, then an addition of this and this is going to be the value of co-management capabilities. Okay, by default, when everything is set to config manager, the value of co-management capabilities is 2 to the power 0, that is 1. Okay, so that's the reason why by default when we enable co-management, all the workloads are at SCCM and we see a co-management capability value of 1, that is 2 to the power 0. Now every time we move a workload, if we move just one workload, the resultant value is going to be that workload plus the default workload. If we move a couple of workloads, the resultant value is going to be an addition of the values for each workload along with the default workload. Okay, so let's just say that we are moving multiple workloads. We are moving the compliance policy, the Windows update policy, and the endpoint protection policy. So the resultant value is going to be the default one, which is always there, which is 2 to the power 0, that is 1. Then plus 2 to the power 1 because we have moved this one, plus 2 to the power 4 which because we have moved this one, plus 2 to the power 5 because we have moved this one, which is going to be 1 plus 2 plus 16 plus 32, that is equal to 51. If we just moved one of them, then the value for the compliance workload is 2 to the power 1, that is 2. So the resultant value is going to be the default value plus 2 to the power 1, that is 3. So this default value is always there, this because this is the value of SCCM. If everything is at SCCM, this is going to be the only value. If everything is at Intune, then all the corresponding workloads will be added along with the resultant value. So if you do a addition of everything, it is going to come to 54 plus the default value. Therefore, the maximum value of co-management workload in this case would be 55. So I've just done a breakdown on what are the possible values of co-management capabilities depending upon which workload has been moved to where. So when all the workload, no means workload is moved to SCCM, yes means workload is moved to Intune. So by default, when all the workloads are set to SCCM, the value that we get is 2 to the power 0, that is 1. If we move the first workload, the value that we get is 2 to the power 1 plus 2 to the power 0, that is 3. If we move everything, then the value of all the workloads are going to get added and the resultant that we get is 55. Okay, so this is just, just simple addition is happening. So just by looking at the value of co-management capabilities, we can determine what is the status of workload. So for example, let's just say that I have moved all the workloads to Intune, and then we find out that a specific policy is not hitting the device. Then the first one of the things that we can check is the value of co-management capabilities. If the value of co-management capabilities is not what it should be, depending upon the addition of the workload, then that would mean that the device did not get the latest policy and the device still believes that a specific workload is being managed via SCCM even though we have changed the workload. So that is how we can do that needed troubleshooting in. So guys, now let's just take a look over the workloads for SCCM version 1902, and the same workloads are present for 1906 as well. So right now, as you can see that we have got something called a client apps, we have got something called office click to run apps which weren't there before, and now we the endpoint protection and the resource access policy come under device configuration. And over here you can see right next to them you can see the value of the co-management capabilities. So it is in this order, and the logic is going to remain the same over here as well. If we are moving one workload, the resultant value is going to be like, for if we just move endpoint protection, the resultant value is going to be 2 to the power 4 plus the default value, that is 1. Therefore, the resultant value will be 17. If we move two of them, then the resultant value is going to be 16 plus 32 plus 1, that is 49. So yes, and one more thing, guys, this Office Click to Run feature that we are seeing over here, that is a pre-released feature. So that is something that needs to be enabled manually. So in the demonstration, I'll actually show you guys how exactly that needs to be enabled. Once it is enabled, only then we can move its workload, and only then its value of co-management capability is effective, and only then that specific kind of policy can be deployed via Intune. Well, the maximum values possible are 255. That is when we add all the values corresponding to the workloads, and the minimum value possible is 2 to the power 0, that is 1, which is the default workload. Uh, this is just, just for your reference, this is just a list of the possible values that we can have. So, if you're moving just the compliance policy, then it is 2 to the power 1, that is 2, plus the default one, that is 3. And if you're moving all of them, then it's the addition of all the values for each respective workload, which comes out to be 255. So just something to keep in mind, and guys, just for your reference. So this is just a snippet of the co-management handler log from an end user's device when the co-management when the SECM server was running with 1902. So over here you can see that the config policy came down to the device, and after that it says that it's merging the workload. Its workload is now being set to 175, and the maximum capability is 255. So by looking at this itself, we can understand that okay, the maximum value is 255. Therefore, the SECM version must be 1902. However, in the previous versions, as far as I remember, as far as I can recall, in the version 1802 or down, I remember that it used to say that merging the co-management values capabilities maximum of 55. I vaguely remember that. So I believe this is just a pointer for you guys. I believe by looking at this also, the end machine can actually guess what exactly would be the version of SECM running. So guys, with the advent of Config Manager 1906, there is a new capability that has been introduced into co-management, and that is this staging tab. So this is how the workload looks in SECM 1906. And as you can see, the workloads are still the same. We still have the 6 workloads, but now there is one more tab over here called staging. So what this enables us to do is it enables us to select a different pilot collection for each workload. So earlier, if you remember earlier, we only had the option of selecting one collection, and all the workloads were governed by that collection. So if I'm selecting the co-management workload to pilot, then all the workloads, may that be compliance, configuration, endpoint protection, will all be governed by the same workload. But now let's just say that I have few devices onto whom I want to push compliance policy, and I have few devices onto which I want to push the Windows update policy. And the ones wherein I'm pushing the compliance policy from Intune should not get the Windows update policy from Intune. They should get the Windows update policy from Config Manager. So now this gives us the option. Config Manager 1906 gives us this option. So what we can do is we can create different pilot collections and then move the workload and associate each workload with a specific collection. So this actually helps us administer the devices in a more granular approach, so to speak. How to see the newer workloads? Right now over here, as you can see that we have got 1 2 3 4 5, we have got these additional workloads, 6 of them in 1902 or 1806 or 1810. However, or I believe it's going to be the same in 1906 as well. However, in case of 1802, you can see that there were only 4 workloads. So this change happened when we upgraded our SECM, as well as our SCCM console. So for us to see the new workloads, we will have to upgrade it to 1806. Once we have upgraded SCCM to 1806, next time when we launch the console, it is going to tell us that you need to upgrade the SCCM console as well. Once we upgrade the SCCM console, the magic happens. And you can go to you can open up the SCCM console, go to administration, overview, updates and servicing, and over there you can see, so at this point of time 1806 was installed, and it was giving me an option saying that you can upgrade to 1810 or 1902. At this point of time 1906 was not released for public yet. Okay, so all we have to do is just right click on this and click on install, and that version is going to get installed. Once that is installed, and the next time when we open up SCCM console, it is going to tell us that the version of console has also later versions available. So where you can see that 10.1075 is available. Earlier it was working on 1074. When we click on when we upgrade the console, that is when the newer workloads are available for us to see. Okay, so that's all I had in this one. In this nugget, I just wanted to walk you through what exactly co-management is and the theoretical part of it. So I decided to do this nugget in two parts so that it doesn't become too long. So in this nugget, we were actually able to see the concept behind using SCCM. We were able to see what it is, what it is not. It's not hybrid. The difference between SCCM and Intune. The difference between hybrid, mixed, and Intune standalone. What exactly is co-management? What are the use cases? Why exactly do we want to make use of a co-management scenario? We took a look over what Brad had to say, how this is zero cost but so much effective. We took a look over the architecture, as in what exactly is the setup from the backend, how exactly the architecture of a device looks. We took a look over the setup, how exactly the setup of co-management is done, the requirements. Please keep in mind hybrid Azure AD is a requirement, it's a prerequisite. We took a look over how exactly the flow of policy happens. So we took, I think that was around 15 or 16 steps. So we took a look over all those 15 or 16 steps, and so there were around 13 steps, and we started from one, wherein we did a discovery of the discovery of the end device and installation of the SCCM client, and we ended with 13, wherein the device was co-managed and was getting the relevant policy from Intune or from SCCM depending upon the workload. So we took a look over the flow, we took a look over the background processing and the logs to check. There were key pointers which I wanted you guys to keep in mind, and I did an explanation on how exactly the co-management capabilities is calculated depending upon the workload. Okay. All right, so we are just halfway there, guys. I know this was just a theoretical one, but I am very much excited to do the next demonstration, wherein I'm going to exactly enroll. I'm going to do everything from scratch. The device is only going to be hybrid Azure AD joined, and I'm going to push a SCCM client and actually show you guys that if I'm making a policy from Intune, it is not taking effect on the device, even if the device is co-managed, if the workload is not moved. Once I move the workload, only then the policy kicks in. Okay. So that's all for the first part, guys. I hope that this has been informative for you. I would like to thank you for viewing. This is your friend Saurabh Sarkar signing off.